Last year, we spent some time trying to find a dealership that was able to custom order a Chevy Bolt with Super Cruise on it, and we were finally able to order it from a dealership in Sterling Heights, Michigan in June of 2022. Our salesperson, Zach, contacted us in late February of 2023 to let us know that it had arrived. Of course, it snowed the night we picked up our car. Our very first paid charging session was at the Meyer store located directly across from the General Motors Tech Center. My husband really did his homework in preparing for our 1,179-mile trip down I-75 to our home in Daytona Beach, Florida, and he signed up with the 5 different electric charge station providers that he had found along our route. I'll include the list of charging stations we used at the end of this video. Charging at one of these stations is relatively easy, especially when you have the app. You just plug it in, authorize your payment, and then it starts charging your car. Our Chevy Bolt dashboard displays how long it will take to charge to 80% battery, and it displays the current estimated average miles we have available. This first charge was with EV Go, and their app has the same information on our battery percentage, and thankfully it also lists the amount of time we have been charging since they have a 60-minute limit, which is pretty inconvenient when you're on a road trip. The best thing about these apps is that you can monitor your progress remotely, and we got to walk around Meyer instead of having to wait in the car in the cold. We received an email from EVgo letting us know that our charging session had ended. We noticed that they had allowed us to go over the 60-minute limit by 1 minute and 32 seconds. We checked out of our hotel the next morning and headed out on our adventure with our 90% charge. And we were happy to find that our Disney mugs fit well in the cup holders. As we started driving out of the Detroit area, we were also thankful that our first charging session had gone smoothly. We had determined that we would be shooting for charging to an 80% battery level on the majority of our fill-ups. We drove for about an hour and a half before we made our first pit stop, which was the Levi's Commons Retail Center in Perrysburg, Ohio. Now, even with a gas car, we are frequent stoppers on long trips, and we will typically only drive an hour or 2 at the most before stopping and stretching our legs or taking a restroom break. This particular stop was actually necessary for peace of mind to be able to make it to our next charging station. I'll say here that it is a strange irony that we found that the worst dearth of DC fast charging stations near Interstate 75 is within the 3 hours of the headquarters of the Detroit automakers. Now, the only charger that Levi's Commons had available for our Bolt to use was a level 2, which is a slow charger. Now, there are some Hilton-branded hotels here, and you could try to charge overnight in one of the spots available, but it didn't make any sense for us to stop for the night only an hour and a half into our travels. A tip about Levi's Commons. Google Maps doesn't have a very accurate pin for the location of the charging stations here. They're kind of located across from Home 2 Suites by Hilton. You can see them through this archway, but you'll have to drive around the back of this building here to get to them. This was a ChargePoint branded station, and we followed the instructions and connected our car, and we used their app to start charging. There were 4 chargers here, but 2 of them were broken. To ChargePoint's credit, though, their app listed this site as only having 2 chargers. Someone was using the only other working charger here, so we were glad one was still available for us. So I mentioned earlier that this was going to be a slow charger. We pulled in with 126 miles average of battery left. When we connected to the charger, our display indicated that a full charge would take over 6 hours. We took a walk and kept checking the app to make sure that the car was still charging. There is a Starbucks location here, so we enjoyed a coffee while we waited just under an hour. And what did that almost hour of charging get us? 20 miles. This was not unexpected, and we were glad to have those measly 20 miles because the next leg of the trip was a little iffy. See, we originally were going to stop at a Chevy dealer nearby instead of Levi's Commons, but we found out that that dealer's charger was broken, even though the app said it was available. We found another dealer about 36 miles away. Their charger was listed as broken, but when we called them, they told us it was working. The bottom line here is that we were concerned about the possibility of broken chargers along our route, so we planned to charge as often as possible. So ultimately, our second stop turned out to be La Rich Chevrolet in Findlay, Ohio, which was only 36 minutes away from Levi's Commons. We were relieved to find that their two chargers were still working, and even better, their faster charger didn't have anyone using it when we arrived. The La Rich charging station was an EV Connect, so if you're counting, this is the third different electric charging provider we've used so far in this trip. Again, pretty simple instructions, and we had already signed up for the app, so we plugged in and got our charge going. I will say how nice the employees at La Rich Chevrolet were. They noticed us waiting outside in the cold, and they welcomed us into their service area waiting room to enjoy some free coffee and use of their restrooms. We had assumed they probably wouldn't mind if we waited in there, but it was nice to be welcomed, and they were very thoughtful about it. Also, a tip about La Rich: ignore that gray box on the right that says out of order. That is not the EV Connect charger. Use the white charging station on the left. We needed to charge for 56 minutes to get back up to 80% of battery, and that wasn't too bad since we were down to an average of 103 miles of range by the time we got there. If you have an electric car, you will notice that using your heating or air conditioning results in high battery drain. Full disclosure, we opted to not use the heat during the first 3 hours of trying to get out of the Michigan-Ohio area because of our concerns about not being able to find a working fast charger. It was a really sunny day, so it wasn't very cold in the car. Everything ended up working out, so we may have been a bit too cautious, but we still feel that we were better off saving that electricity in case we needed the extra miles to search out a working charger. Our next stop was an hour and a half away in Huber Heights, Ohio, where we made it to our first Walmart, and they are home to the Electrify America charge stations. Yes, this will be our fourth different electric charging provider and the fourth app we had to use. I'll give a little spoiler here that we ended up relying on Walmart and Electrify America significantly for the remainder of our trip, and even though we encountered a few issues here and there, we were pretty happy with their availability and charging performance. They even have the option of using a credit card instead of the app, but we didn't test that out. We plugged in with an average of 87 miles of range left, so we needed to charge a little longer here. We were able to stretch our legs at Walmart and get something to eat while we waited, and we kept checking the app to make sure the car was still charging. We ended up charging for an hour and 19 minutes here and ended with an average of 226 miles of charge available, which would easily get us through to our last stop of the day, 151 miles away in Lexington, Kentucky. Our first day of travel ended at the Hyatt Place in Lexington, which was about a 2-hour and 15-minute ride from our Walmart charge-up. The Hyatt did not have an electric charging station, but there was a Harley-Davidson dealer a few doors down that did. If you're wondering why we didn't stay at a hotel with a charging station available, it was because typically hotels with charging stations only have one station available, and they mostly offer level 2, i.e. slow charging, which takes all night long. If someone else is in the spot, then we would be out of luck, and we would need a backup charging plan anyway, so that's just what we planned for. And speaking of planning, the charging planning was getting a little easier at this point. If the Harley-Davidson charging station hadn't worked out, we could have driven 19 miles back north on 75 to charge at an Electrify America fast charger in a Walmart parking lot that we had decided to skip the previous evening because we were tired and wanted to get to the hotel without another hour or so wait at a Walmart. There were some other charging options around Lexington too, but they were slow chargers from what we could tell. But the Harley-Davidson charger was functional and available at the time we needed to plug in, so we were all set. This was another ChargePoint charger. We plugged in with an average of 73 miles left, and we decided that we would only charge for an hour because our next stop was only 99 miles away. Now, you really need to pay attention to opening and closing times when you're charging at businesses and dealerships. This charging station didn't allow charging until 10 a.m., and it closes when the dealership closes, which is why we didn't plug in the night before. We ended with 149 average miles of charge, which easily got us to our next stop, which was a Walmart in Williamsburg, Kentucky, about an hour and a half away, and actually all of our next 4 stops on I-75 for the day, which covered Kentucky, Tennessee, and Georgia were all at Electrify America charging stations. They were all in Walmart parking lots except the last one, which was in a shared retail parking lot that had a Best Buy and Michael's in it. Each of the 4 charging stops we made in our second travel day were only about 70 to 100 miles away from each other, and every time they had enough open chargers at these stops where we just pulled in, hooked up, and charged for roughly an hour before going on our way. We arrived in Kennesaw, Georgia, our last stop for the day, with 100 miles of average charge left. Instead of checking into our hotel, we decided to fuel up for the next day since it was only 7:45 p.m. We did encounter our first problem with charging at this stop and found that the screen for the charger that we picked was not working. There were plenty of other open chargers available for us to move to, so this wasn't a true problem. Also, after connecting the car, we found that the app showed that the car was actually charging, so we ended up just using the charger with the broken screen anyway, and we monitored our charge while we browsed around Michael's. We charged up to 205 miles of average range and drove over to the True by Hilton Hotel in Kennesaw. Kennesaw is an area we've stopped in many times before because they have a great pizza place called Big Pie in the Sky that we always stop in if we're in the neighborhood. When we started out the next morning, we saw that we had 3 miles added to our average range for the day and figured maybe it had something to do with the temperature increase from the night before. Day 3 and the final leg of our journey. Our actual driving time for the day was going to be over 7 hours, so with stopping and charging, we were looking at 11 or 12 hours on the road, which is a little longer than I'm usually happy about, but we were tired of staying in hotels, and we were looking forward to sleeping in our own bed, so we planned to get it done in one day. At our first charging stop for the day in Forsyth, Georgia, which was our 9th charging stop overall, we found that 2 of the 4 charging stations were broken, but luckily 2 were still working and only 1 was in use when we arrived. With our average of 201 miles of range after Forsyth, we could have skipped the next stop in Cordell, Georgia, which was 82 miles away, but remember, the lower your battery is, the longer you will have to charge, so our preference was to stop in Cordell to stretch our legs and charge for an hour, as opposed to stopping in 2 hours and having to charge for 2 hours. Also, for battery health, my husband recommended we keep it between 20 and 80% of charge. Funny enough, we ended up experiencing a problem in Cordell, which was fine since we technically already had enough charge to get to our next stop. We connected our vehicle to the Electrify America station and it started charging, so we went into Walmart and walked around. About 20 minutes later, we received an error message that our charging had been interrupted, so we went outside and disconnected the vehicle. At this point, instead of trying to reconnect, we just decided to get back on the road and charge a little longer at our next stop, which was another Walmart in Valdosta, Georgia. We had an average of 84 miles of range left when we got to Valdosta. After we had plugged in, we got a weird notice from Electrify America letting us know that they had credited back a $247 idle fee that we obviously had not incurred, so we definitely think there was something wrong with that Cordell station. A tip here is that you need to be aware that most of these charging stations require that you remove your car once your charging is complete, or they will charge you for idle fees. That is why the apps are helpful to have, because if we want to leave our car while it's charging, the app will let us know when it's getting close to completion. One of the biggest takeaways from our journey is that you really have to do your homework on figuring out the correct plug and charging speed for your specific vehicle. For example, Electrify America had 2 different types of plugs and 3 different charging speeds. Also, the layout of some of the stations isn't ideal for every electric vehicle charging port, depending on where it is located. We ended our Valdosta stop with an average of 200 miles of range. We were originally going to be trying our 5th charge station provider and corresponding app by visiting the Florida Power and Light electric chargers on US Highway 90 in Lake City, Florida, but a pretty spectacular rain and lightning storm kept us from stopping. Thankfully, my husband had already planned for a backup, and we ended up driving to an EVgo charging station located in a retail plaza with a Winn-Dixie in it in Jacksonville. Thankfully, the lightning wasn't in the area when we stopped, and this was the last bit of charging we needed to do in order to make the remaining 95-mile ride home to Daytona Beach. But if I had to do it over again, I would have planned on stopping for the night, even though we were so close to home, because it was just pouring buckets for a while there, and it was a miserable white-knuckle ride for the last hour and a half. We were thrilled to make it home in one piece, and the next day we decided to do a fast charge at a ChargePoint station in Daytona Beach Shores because our level 2 charger hadn't yet been installed. As we reflected on our experience, we were kind of surprised that we had so few issues with charging. We never had to wait for a charger, and we only had one time where our charging was interrupted. I know that most of our issues were mitigated by my husband doing all of the legwork and finding the fast chargers available to us and planning for as many redundancies as possible. The good thing about a trip down or up I-75 is that there are plenty of hotels and Airbnbs available, and we figured if we did end up getting stuck, we could just do some slow charging at a regular outlet and spend the night. If you found this video helpful, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to Paradise Today to see our next video on why we decided to switch to an electric vehicle, but spoiler alert, it wasn't to try to save money on gas.